This is the Mangina Dialogues. We at it again with your host Nick Scopes and the Fuegolicious. You know how we do, cause you know we keeping it gangster and silly. Unplugged like a full swung titty. About get kitty, cause you know we down. And right now you're in the mix, so get ready, cause we about to get it poppin', and we ain't stopping.
I'm educated, unfiltered, unhinged. This the Mangina Dialogues.
Hello and welcome to the Mangina Dialogues. I am your host, Nick Scopes.
And I am Greg.
Just Greg today, huh?
I'm not going with the rest. Not today. Not today.
And our guest today, he knows a little bit about comedy, just a tiny bit. Brian Volk-Weiss. What's up, Brian? How are you?
It's good to be here, and I do want to say I love that theme song.
Yes,
so, that's a great theme song. I did not hate it.
Thank you. It's
beautiful.
It's on its legs, last legs. We're gonna probably dump it sooner or later. But thank you for the compliment. We appreciate it coming from.
Yeah, I like that.
So appreciate it.
Love it.
So talking to Nick earlier about talking to you, I was like, I won't even know where to start in bringing up different topics because my head is spinning just thinking about it. So I'm going to start with something that we talked a little bit about off air when you produced and created the Toys That Made Us for Netflix. What brought you to that project? Obviously, looking behind you, I think it's probably obvious. But
I feel like he's got a few toys for those of you that are just listening. There's like 2 or 3. That's it.
Yeah,
with three zeros after that number.
At least
it's extensive. I'm kidding. It's unreal. Yeah.
This ain't shit. You should see what's on the other side of that laptop.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus, good for you, man. I actually just started the series today. I started watching.
Oh boy!
Oh my God! Holy crap, dude! What the hell?
And that's just half the room.
That's very funny. I used to do. I mentioned I do that stuff for a living, and I did Kiss products with Gene for a very long time, and very similar. They sent me shots of his room where he keeps all his collectibles in his house, like every Kiss thing ever made.
I've been to his house.
Okay, so you know, right? So,
but I will say this in my defense: there's over 2,000 things in here. One of them, and it was a gift my company gave me on my 40th birthday. One of them looks like me.
One. Yeah, it's like, can you imagine walking into your house in the room and there's a million things that look just like you laying on your shelves?
Creepy,
weird. And weird things. So, but to that, after spending all these years in comedy and doing all these amazing projects and winning Grammys and accolade after accolade, what brought you to that project? Was it just a passion and love of that?
You're going to love my answer because it's a perfect morph into comedy. It started at a Borders Books where I couldn't find any books about the history of Transformers. There was like 1,000 books about the War of 1812,
right.
And not a single book about Transformers, G.I. Joe. Like the only books they had about toys was Star Wars and Barbie, but those books that they had really weren't even about the toys. They were about the quote unquote cultural phenomenon. So
right.
Even if you why does Barbie exist? Those books couldn't even really answer it. It would just talk about cultural phenomena. So that was the inspiration. It took 7 years.
Wow.
Between that moment and being told Netflix was buying it. And there were 2 extremely lucky breaks that happened. There was an executive at Netflix, and he covered stand-up comedy acquisitions. These were specials that I had already sold to Showtime or Comedy Central that were coming off their first window. And he would buy those. So a very kind of obscure job as it relates to comedy.
Right.
He and I became very good friends. And he came to my house with his family, and he saw my toy collection. And the reason why that's very important is producers, just like actors, get stereotyped.
Right.
So I was always stereotyped as the comedy producer. So whenever I would try and sell a show about toys, people would be like, why is the comedy guy talking about toys? It was, I mean, I know that's funny, but it was real. I mean, it was a real problem.
I'm sure.
That was 70% of a decade delaying the show getting greenlit. So that was the first thing that happened. The guy saw my toys. The second thing that happened was Netflix decided they wanted to go into unscripted originals, and they picked that guy to start that program. So all of a sudden, this guy who had this kind of niche job buying second or third or sometimes even fourth run stand-up comedy was now given like $1 trillion budget to launch unscripted. So I started, hey, I got a show about toys.
Right.
And I basically sent him what we had come very close to selling it to History Channel, and then a year or two later, very close to selling it to Nat Geo. So I took both of those decks, sent it to him, and it took him about 6 months. But then he finally told me what type of show about toys he would buy.
Right.
And then we made a new deck, we made a sales tape, and that's what got the show greenlit.
Wow. So, I mean, obviously this is a massive passion of yours. This isn't just a idea that you had, oh, this would be a good idea for a show. You're living that passion of why people watch that show.
Other than my family, it's like the only thing I'm really into except reading.
Right.
I have no other hobbies.
So what was your, like, as a child, like, what was the first, property that captured your brain?
Star Wars.
Okay. So is that why it was the first one? Or did you just pick? Yeah. So
I would be a lawyer or a doctor, not a doctor. I'd be a lawyer or like a dentist in New York if it wasn't for Star Wars.
Right.
Like, because of the, so everything I've done, it started somehow, as it relates to my career, started with Star Wars. I'm in entertainment because of Star Wars.
So what do you think of the recent Star Wars films?
One of them's an A+. One of them is like a B. And if there was anything lower than an F, one of them would be that.
And I guess we're not going to know which those are.
No, it's Last Jedi. That's the below F.
Okay.
Really? It was that bad, you thought?
I'll tell you this. This is the best way I can explain it to you. About a year ago, my toy collection was in a smaller room. And literally one piece at a time, I moved over, at the time, 1,500 individual pieces from one side of the house to another.
Oh my God.
Some of these toys go back to me being 3 years old.
Wow.
8 toys out of 1,500 didn't make it from A to B. They went into the garage. Of the 8, 7 of them were duplicates, like different versions,
right.
Not the same thing twice, but different versions of the characters from The Force Awakens. So I saw The Force Awakens. I loved everything about it. I saw it 3 times in the theaters.
Wow.
And I bought every Rey they made. I bought every Finn they made, every Poe they made. Then The Last Jedi comes out, and it was so bad. That's why I'm saying it's less than an F. It was so bad that when I moved my collection, I didn't want more than one Rey. I didn't want more than one Finn. Because it destroyed those characters somehow.
Right.
And
Right.
as a counterpoint, Star Trek V is considered to be the worst Star Trek movie. It didn't destroy Captain Kirk.
Right.
It didn't destroy, like, Last Jedi almost destroyed Luke Skywalker. Like, it was just so bad. Yeah.
So what about the standalone films?
Rogue One's an A+, Solo's an A.
Okay.
And I will say this, anyone who doesn't like Solo, they were just still fucked up from the last Jedi.
Last Jedi.
That they need to see it again. Like that's yeah.
I was late to the Star Wars game. I never watched them my whole life until 2016. I saw Rogue One. And then I know you're looking at me like, what the hell? Even I'm
not looking at you at like, what the hell? I'm looking at you like, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to enter Star Wars through Rogue One.
Yeah, I was.
Like that, in many ways, that's actually the perfect way to do it.
That's what my buddy. So I was traveling. I was on a flight back from California to Connecticut, and I was traveling with my buddy who was a massive Star Wars fan. And Rogue One was on both the flights. We had to connect in Dallas. And the first flight, it didn't finish the movie. And I was like, damn it. And then it started on the next flight. And finally, I got to watch it. But I was so into it after that. I asked him a million questions. And he was like, this is probably the best movie you could have started with. And now you got to go back and go see all the older ones. Like I'm a personal trainer. That's my day job. And I told one of my clients this. Like, yeah, I just saw Star Wars first time. I saw Rogue One. And this is like a 55-year-old man. He literally stopped what he was doing. He put the bar down. He goes, what did you just say? And I was like, that was the first one I've ever seen. And he was like, what are you doing the rest of today? You need to go home and you need to watch. This was a dude who was like a higher up, like he was like a higher up at GE Capital here in Connecticut, like very established guy. Yeah. Who was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know, man. I've never seen it.
That would be me. But don't feel bad. I just went through this myself with Pokemon.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally knew 0.0 about Pokemon. Nothing. Like, I didn't know what it would, like, nothing. I knew there was
still don't, bro. I still
bunny
don't.
rabbit or something. Like, and a ball, a red and white. That's it. And then I saw the movie with my kids, and I'm like, oh, this is what it's like for all the people that don't know Star Wars or Star Trek. This is how they feel.
Yeah, exactly. Star Trek, I've watched some of the newer movies, but I've never got into it. But Star Wars, I went back and watched everything. Like literally watched everything. I was hooked after Rogue One.
So is that your other one? It's Star Trek?
Yeah, it's those two. Like what I always say is Star Wars inspired my career. Star Trek, and I know this is crazy, but Star Trek gave me a code to live by. Cool. I'm not religious. I wasn't in the military. So the best thing, the closest thing that I have to a code all came from Star Trek.
Wow.
Well,
and I know it's fake. Let me get there before you do. I know it's fake.
No, I'm not gonna rip you, dude. That's where people get. I mean, I to cut back into the toys thing. I was just watching your thing on Netflix, right? The Toys That Made Us, and we're watching the Ninja Turtles, right? That was my life as a kid, man. Are you like? There's nothing wrong with it. I know they're obviously not real, but like me and my 32-year-old friends still talk about it, and they still have you know what I mean? Like. Just because it wasn't real doesn't mean it didn't make such a huge impact. You know what I mean?
I'm biased, but I tend to agree.
So how did you go from, I mean, you say that Star Wars is where what drove you to entertainment, but like what transitions that world into comedy? Because they're so different worlds.
So it was the most random of everything. I came out here because I wanted to direct. I wanted to do science fiction and action. I never watched comedy. I shit you not. The only comedy I saw in college, The Waterboy. I did not see, like, my wife, when I forced her to watch Star Wars and Star Trek, would force me to watch all the comedies I hadn't watched
Right.
that everybody else did.
It's a
I
fair
wasn't into
trade-off.
comedy
Fair.
at all. Not just stand-up comedy, like no comedy.
Wow.
So I had been out here a little bit less than a year. I'd been out here about 9 months. I decided that I didn't want to be a director, and I decided that I needed to like get more into the business of the business. And I was interning for a while at this small company. And I was not only out of money, like I had maxed out every credit card, like I was broke, like didn't know how I was going to pay rent, like broke. And in the building, on the floor that I was in, there was a communal copy room. And there was an assistant to a manager. And one day, and we had become friends. And one day he told me he was looking to replace himself because he had gotten another job. And I had been working for free.
Right.
And I was like, does that job pay like dollars? And he was like, yes. And he was like, I was like, I would like to meet and see if I could get that job. So I go in for the job. I don't know anything. All I know and all I care about, this really shows you the randomness of life. Avocado salesman. I mean, he could have made mufflers.
Right.
Turned out, going on. Like, I didn't, I'm like, oh, I'm working at this company. I might as well see what's going on. There's a 7:00 show. I got a pass to the 7:00 show. I watched the 7:00 show. I loved it. I asked the owner, the bouncer, whatever, can I stay for the next show? And he was like, sure, you work for Barry. Finished the second show. So now I've been there 8 hours.
Wow.
Jesus
I'm like,
Christ.
can I stay for the third show? And he was like, you got the bug, don't you? I'm like, I think I do. And that's how it all started. I literally watched 3 shows, which was probably back then somewhere between 24 and 30 comedians. And that was it. And that night I met Jeff Ross, Dane Cook, Harlan Williams, like everybody who had become a massively important part of the rest of my life, or at least the first part of my career. I met them all that night. And the best part of the story is, because I'm always taking notes, I'm always writing things down, I wrote down all my favorite comics. And then Monday morning, I was talking to Barry, and Barry was like, who do you like? And I'm like, well, funny you should ask. I actually wrote it down.
I have a list.
Of the 20 people I wrote down, Barry repped like 14 or 15 of them.
Wow.
My favorite was Dane Cook.
Yeah.
And then Barry was like, oh yeah, I rep him. And then just to, again, show you the merging of worlds, and again, how absolutely random show business is, and maybe all business in life. One day, Barry calls me. I started working for Barry in March of 99. In May of 99, I get a call from Barry, and Barry goes, and again, just to, because I think you're a little younger than me, or at least you are, I had my first cell phone ever. Like, that's how long ago this was. Like, I'd had a cell phone for about 3 months at this point. Barry calls me, and this is not an exaggeration whatsoever. Barry goes, are you doing that thing where, like, people are, like, camping out to get tickets to that new movie. And I'm like, are you talking about Star Wars? And he's like, yes, Star Wars. Are you camping out for Star Wars? Are you doing that thing I've seen on the news for the rope line or whatever, like with tents? And I go, well, I'm not staying in a tent, but yes, I am a part of it was called a line team. And he goes, would you do me a favor and get one of my clients a ticket? And I don't know if you guys know this or not. That was a major no-no because you had to wait in line. This was the first Star Wars movie in 20 years. But Barry was my boss. I want to impress my boss.
Yep.
I get him the extra ticket. Actually, 2 tickets. I got him 2 tickets. Both of those tickets went to Dane. That's how I found out Dane was a Star Wars fan. And I am 99.99999% sure if Dane had not been a Star Wars fan or I had not been a Star Wars fan, I would have had a completely different career. Because through Star Wars, Dane and I bonded in 99. So by the time I actually finally became a manager, and then about 2 years later, Dane blew up, like I was managing Dane.
Wow.
But like, I wasn't managing any of Barry's other clients. The only client of Barry's I was managing, co-managing with Barry, was Dane.
Wow.
And all I can point to is, without Star Wars, that relationship would not have been there.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like it, or that movie not coming out, but that's pretty wild. So, all right, so now you're managing Dane. How long do you work with Barry, and where do you go from there?
Well, while I was working with Barry and Dane, at first as a manager for my clients, I was making stand-up specials. And, you know, when you're making stand-up specials for your clients, between 0 and maybe, at least for us back then, twice a year, we would produce a stand-up special for our clients.
Right.
So this is going on for a while. Then one day, I get a call. Do you know the name Mike Berkowitz?
No.
I do not know.
Mike is one of the biggest, most successful touring agents in history. Just off the top of my head, his clients, like right now, are Kevin Hart, Aziz Ansari, Amy Schumer, Mulaney, Birbiglia, Bill Burr. But like, he used to have Louis C.K. I mean, you name it. He's the most successful touring agent in history. He calls me up he's also, I'm allowed to curse, right?
Bring it.
Oh yeah, rip it.
He's also a tough motherfucker. Or as they said in Pulp Fiction, I believe a hard pipe hitting motherfucker. So he calls me up one day, and the reason I mention that is for this reason. He calls me up one day, he's like, hey man, would you ever do a special for a non-client? And I got really offended. I was like really angry. And this was not a guy you got angry at. And I'm like, well, you know, Mike, I got to tell you, man, I take offense to your question. Like, I'm a manager. Like, why would your clients be good enough for me to produce for, but I'm not good enough to manage for? Nah, man, not cool. And I don't know if I hung up on him, but it was close.
Right.
And the next day, I'm in the shower, I'm driving to work, I don't remember, but it suddenly dawns on me, my job is to make money. And as long as it's legal, who cares?
That
Right.
just dawned on you. That's good.
It really did. It took about 12 hours. And again, I'll be very honest with you. I hear over the last couple of years, and it kind of drives me crazy, about how smart I am, or I'm a genius. I saw the future. So I really go out of my way to show people the stories to illustrate that I did not see the future. I'm not a genius. So much shit was random. If Mike hadn't called me, to the point you made a minute ago, had that Star Wars movie not come out in 99, if it had come out in 97 or 2002, I may have had a completely different career. So Anyway, I digress. So he luckily he accepted my apology, which is still shocking to me. Because A, he doesn't really accept apologies, and B, I was completely wrong and a dick. But anyway, and we produced Michael Ian Black's special, and it was the first time I had ever produced anything for a non-client.
Right.
And I will tell you this, I love being a manager. I miss it. I mean, no, that's not true. I don't miss it. There's parts of it I miss, but it was a wonderful feeling producing for Michael Ian Black and not managing him.
Right.
And I'm like, I like this. So that was the first thing. The second thing that happened was I read a book called The Long Tail, which came out in 2007. And a lot of people, when I tell this story, are like, oh my God, I'm going to get the book. Don't get the book. It'll be the most boring fucking book you've ever read because it's 2020. But in 2006, I actually read the book in 2006. The book predicted everything. It predicted YouTube, Netflix, streaming, everything. It didn't name the names because nobody knew the names.
Right.
But it predicted something called unlimited shelf space. And what that meant was, like, if you go into Target, they only have a certain amount of shelf space. So they have to sell Britney Spears. They have to sell Justin Timberlake to make the most of every square foot. But if everything would go digital, that variable would be removed. So that's when I was like, all right, I got to build a library. And I'm already making stand-up specials. Why don't I build a library of stand-up specials? And that's what I did. So we went from doing 1 or 2 a year to doing 3 a year, 5 a year, 10 a year, 20 a year, 30 a year, until we had a library. And then once we had the library, we were able to build the distribution arm.
Right. So but you didn't do that all while you were with Barry. Then you went out on your own.
The starting of the process was definitely with Barry.
Right.
At a certain point, Barry left the company, and it continued after he was gone.
Right. Oh, right. And so you stayed and then got it. So what do you attribute having such a good eye for comedic talent to? Right. If you don't want, I mean, obviously everyone, genius this, genius that, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, to your point earlier, but obviously you recognize the best talent in the world.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to answer your question, and you may think I'm being humble. I'm not. This is really the answer. This is the truthful answer to your question. It's not that I have an eye for talent that's better than anyone else's. The truth of the matter is this. Because I was a manager, I knew what it was like to be a manager. And
Right.
because I was a manager, all of my best friends were agents. So I understood agents and managers. So what I learned from that was there's a group of agents at a certain level. It's less than 20.
Right.
There's a group of managers at a certain level. It's about 10. If those 20 agents and those 10 managers are jointly sharing a client, who am I to disagree with their thought process behind signing that client?
Right.
Because as a former manager, and because all my friends were agents, I know that the most valuable commodity an agent or a manager has is time. So if this group of agents and managers at the tippy top of their careers and the tippy top of their professions are saying, I am going to sign this comedian, and then someone on the other side agrees, the odds of that person being, and just so you also understand, it's not just an issue of talent. It's an issue of talent as being perceived by the population
Right.
at a specific moment in time. So Ali Wong, if we had done her special 5 years earlier or 5 years later, I don't know if she would have blown up the way she did.
Right.
And that's true for every comedian. Tom Segura, everyone we did that no one knew who they were when we did it. And then now they're selling 10,000 tickets a night. It's success is so delicate as a comedian and arguably potentially random that you just have to make a move and hope you're right.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is sometimes you are, sometimes you're not.
Right.
But that's how I negated trusting my own eye. And the other thing I'll also say about eyes, it's a very egotistical position to take. And I always thought that. So when I was in a position to start greenlighting my own specials, unlike a lot of other people who have tried to replicate before and after what we've done, a major mistake that they did was they thought their eye was like Jesus. And nobody has that. Nobody, except Jesus. Jesus has his own. But you know what I'm saying?
Is he back
So
on your
like,
shelf there?
That might be the only thing not on my shelf. But it was just about not, when you're a manager, if you're a good manager, you need to strip ego out of your life. It's all about your clients.
Yeah.
And when I became somebody who was greenlighting things, I kept that mentality.
Right. So, this might be the world's dumbest question, but do you love comedy?
Yes.
Okay.
I learned to love it.
Right.
I was born to love Star Wars. I was born to love Star Trek. I learned to love comedy. I have a whole comedy shelf. I have 2 comedy shelves too.
Right. So do you still go to clubs to see like people performing? They're just random night at the Comedy Store or Laugh Factory, whatever, at all?
No.
Like totally not your thing.
Fuck no. But I'll tell you this. Here's 2 answers so I don't sound like a complete asshole. Number 1, I'm there all the time anyway.
Right.
So why would I go on my Saturday night with my wife when I was there Tuesday and Thursday?
Well, what were you there Tuesday and Thursday for?
Seeing somebody specifically for a specific reason.
Got it. Okay,
So,
that's what I was asking. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you this: at some point when I retire, I'll probably go every weekend.
Right.
Okay.
Like maybe not every weekend, but I'll probably go at least twice a month to go see live stand-up for the rest of my life.
You retiring anytime soon?
I'd say minimum 15 years.
Okay, good.
So you got a little bit. We got a little bit left.
Just making sure. So, one of the other things, I've been a stand-up comedy fan my entire life, and I actually am older than you. And it goes back, there's so many different touch points for me on why. But it seems like the last, I'm trying to pinpoint when, but I'd say the last 3 years, maybe 4 years, but certainly within the last 3. And I hate to use the word renaissance, but there seems to be something that has happened in the last few years with stand-up comedy kind of taking over a lot of different things. Like, do you just attribute that to timing, or that the abundance of amazing stand-up comedians are out there and you guys are putting stuff out, all the time, keeping it fresh? Like, is there any explanation whatsoever, or is it just potluck?
Not to be argumentative, and tell me after I explain myself if you agree with me or not.
Sure.
It is not a renaissance. It is the antithesis of a renaissance. This is what I think happened.
Sure.
I'll start with a conclusion, and then I'll back up the facts that lead to my conclusion, which could be wrong. It's just my opinion.
I'm going to you being right.
Stand-up comedy for the last 50 years or more was a part of the comedy genre. So people would say comedy, they would think Seinfeld.
Right.
They would think Waterboy. They would think Fish Called Wanda. Like I told you, when I saw Jerry Maguire, it didn't even occur to me that Jay Mohr was a stand-up. And I would argue most people were like me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what I always say is, when I was in high school, if my cafeteria could hold 1,000 students, maybe, and I wasn't one of them, but maybe 2 at lunch were talking about stand-up because a new Carlin special had come out.
Right.
So that's my conclusion. Stand-up was pulled out of comedy and given its own genre. By the way, very similar to how horror was pulled out of drama. Like horror used to be a part of drama. So like The Exorcist, it's a drama. But then after The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, and a couple others, every year, somebody was like, I think this might be its own thing. And then, of course, Halloween, Nightmare Before Elm Street. That's horror became its own thing. And you're absolutely right when you say 3 years. It happened about 3 years ago. Stand-up became its own genre.
Right.
The reason that happened, I think, is a bunch of things all happen at the same time. 1, social media. 2, streaming. 3, and I know you're going to say, but that's streaming. You're being redundant. Netflix.
Right.
And I'll explain to you why I don't think it's redundant. So, streaming in general made it so that you wouldn't have to watch Comedy Central at 10 p.m. to see the new Sarah Silverman special.
Right.
If you weren't home at 10 p.m. on a Saturday, you didn't get to see Sarah Silverman in 1996. Streaming made it so you could see it anytime you want. But here's what social media did. Part of the problem with stand-up comedy is it's about an hour. It's called an hour special for a reason.
Right.
So if you say to somebody like me who likes spaceships and lasers, hey, here's a comedian you've never heard of in your life. Give him an hour on Sunday. Like, what are you talking about? I don't even know who that is. I'm going to watch Knight Rider. But here's what social media did. Social media took that hour, cut it into 4-minute sections. And then, on top of that, instead of Comedy Central saying to me, coming up next, comedian you've never heard of, now Gabe Levine, my best friend since 1986, posts a 4-minute clip of Eliza Schlesinger. I never heard of her, but hey, it's just 4 minutes. Why not? I hit play. I laugh. She's funny. Let me watch some more clips.
Right.
Then I read, she's coming to my town. I can go see Eliza Schlesinger live for $20. And all of a sudden, I'm hooked.
Right.
Now I love stand-up. Now I do stand-up as a thing. Now I have a shitty day at work. Let me watch some stand-up. That could cheer me up.
Yeah.
So that was all new. And then the third thing, like I said, Netflix, one of the things that is not talked about very often, and I don't know why, I've actually never heard anyone else discuss this but me, Ted Sarandos is a massive stand-up comedy fan. The way I grew up with Star Wars, he grew up with stand-up. He loved stand-up.
Right.
So when he became in charge of Netflix and was given an unlimited bank account, he was like, well, what do I like? Stand-up comedy. So Netflix, instead of making 12 to 24 specials a year, like Showtime or Comedy Central were, with HBO in the middle making 5 or 6, Netflix was like, well, we should do at least 52. That way we could have one a week.
Right.
Then they started making 104.
Yep.
Et cetera, et cetera. And then also Netflix, unlike Comedy Central or Showtime or HBO or whatever, Netflix had permeated the population deeper than anything that had come before it. So it was like if Ted Sarandos had done the same thing at True TV,
Right.
it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
But so those things coming together is what's led to, instead of Renaissance, if I can be cheesy,
Sure.
led to a new dawn.
New Dawn.
How cheesy is that?
Very cheesy.
Thank
Very
you.
cheesy. But it was great. I enjoyed it.
Perfect. And you know, I do. I see your point and I agree with you. I just, you know, look at it from my, you know, earliest memories, and then there's just there was a void. There was just many years of just a void, and that could be my fault, but
Oh, but that's how I felt too, man. I mean, I remember like the Kings of Comedy coming out, and I remember watching that. That was 2000, I believe, that came out, and that was like, for me, I was 12 at the time, so it was like the first stand up I've ever seen in my entire life. I saw that, and then a few years later, Dane Cook blew up. Remember that? And then there was like he said, kind of like a lull, and then all of a sudden, it's like Joe Rogan, Tom Segura, all these guys have these massive podcasts and create these massive communities, and, you know, Fighter and the Kid, and they go sell out everywhere they go. You know, again, maybe it's my fault, but I agree with you, Greg. It's the same. It feels like the same thing, but
anyway, we thank you for giving us tons and tons of content.
I thank you for watching it.
What has there been anything that's escaped you that you've wanted to produce or put out that has been not?
There's only one special I fucked up on. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. There are specials I passed on that became successful, but I passed for the right reasons, and I have no anger at myself for passing.
Right.
The only one I fucked up on was Joe Coy. I could have had Joe Coy's special, I think, 4 years ago. And for a variety of miscalculations, I passed on it. And I'm very sad that I missed it. That's the only one where I'm mad at myself for passing on. A special that I didn't do and I wasn't offered, but I wish I had done is, oh, God. Can you guys edit this?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm so excited about it. I'm getting his name. Just having a brain fart.
blocked it out of your memory.
What's his name?
It's all right. The force is strong with you. I could feel it. You got this.
Totally.
The 7th.
Ronnie Chang. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
His special that came out in December, one of my favorite specials of all time.
Yeah. I watched that with my buddy. That was unreal. And I never really heard of him before. But again, that's the beauty of this like streaming stuff. We're like, oh, it's Friday night. We're hanging out. I've never seen this guy before. Let's try it. Boom. I was like, this guy's fucking hilarious.
That's how I found. I mean, so many people. I just, I travel a lot, or was traveling a lot for work, East Coast, West Coast, and I would just watch, load up on stand-up specials or all the different things on Netflix and just watch them on the East to West flights and see people that I never knew or that I just I wasn't that familiar with, and it is. I think it's largely due to the streaming situation. Now it's just it's all there is to do. The media has so incredibly changed the last few years on where people are getting their content and how that it's for one, I imagine it's an extremely tough job for you now at this point to pick the right stuff, because there is so much stuff out there that is competing for eyeballs in every single different place, whether it's
artists have put it out themselves. Like, the podcast community, it's different. Like back in the day, all these comedians always talk about this. There was like, couple late night spots, and then like that would lead to maybe a TV deal. and like that will. But like this, you just put something on YouTube, or like you said, you find a clip of someone, you're like, oh, this person's great, and then it leads you down a rabbit hole of kind of finding their stuff. It's very different now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what's up next for you guys? I mean, besides just putting out the greatest comedy specials of the year.
Buying more toys, possibly.
Yeah, buying toys.
Buying another room, I should say.
It's already occurred today, by the way. We just shot 4 specials, believe it or not, a couple weeks ago. We shot it at the Rose Bowl parking lot.
Yep.
So those were fantastic. Absolutely 4 for 4, A+. I'll be honest with you, we have a lot of specials that were supposed to shoot in March and April and May that got rescheduled. I am starting to feel pretty good they ain't going to shoot this year. Rumor has it it's almost August. Yeah, I mean, we've been acquiring specials voraciously. I mean, in the 100 days of COVID so far, approximately, I mean, we've acquired probably about 25 specials, originals that had never aired anywhere.
So like Jay, that he shot himself that brought to you, and you
stuff like that. Yeah.
Which, by the way, that special is fantastic.
Which one?
Jay Mohr.
Oh, I'm glad you like it. I love it.
Yeah. It
was really good.
I love Jay.
Top to bottom, that thing is fantastic. Yeah. So how'd it go at the Rose Bowl? Because we had Erica Rhodes on a month ago, and she was one of your Pasadena Rose Bowl specials, right?
It is the biggest, most complicated show we have ever produced, right. And nothing went wrong. Nothing. Zero. Wow. Nothing. Not one thing went wrong.
And what are those? Do those have homes yet, or are they going to be on your guys' stuff?
We have an offer. I don't know if we're going to take it or not, but we do have an offer.
Right. So when do you think they'll come out? Next year?
Yeah, definitely next year. We got to edit all 4. Then I got to shop them to the buyers. Then I got to see what kind of offers we get or don't get, and then make a decision.
Right. I'm going to put my offer in now for. I will send you smoked spare ribs or any type of meat of your choice, and 4 classic Ninja Turtles cereal bowls from the 1970s.
Well, you just did me a huge favor, because I can now legally tell every buyer we have 2 offers.
Leverage, baby.
I'll put it. It's official. I mean, I'd like to be considered.
Shoot me an email. Notarize it.
I will. No problem. In blood. Anyway, man, this has been a thrill for us, obviously.
Yeah.
Brian, me too.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
We're really huge fans of yours, obviously, and what you guys are doing, and just very excited for the future of what Comedy Dynamics is doing and putting out. And it's really awesome for us comedy fans.
You're very kind. And, the one thing I always like to mention is, and it's kind of no shit, but I still like to say it. I'm like one dude with like dozens of people that allow the company to do what we do. So I always like to point that out. Say this is a team sport would be quite the understatement.
Right. Yeah, of course.
I'm sure, man.
The entire team and community over there, and the 3,000 figurines behind you.
I'm not there yet.
Well,
you're close, bro. You are close.
Sending you some boxes of stuff, you might be way closer than you think.
Ha!
All right, man. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Brian. This was great, man. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Thanks.